You think money can buy wisdom? The janitor asked quietly, her voice barely rising above the hum of the marble-floored lobby. The billionaire froze mid-laugh, the joke dying on his lips. Something in her tone, calm, steady, and strangely knowing, hit deeper than he expected. That was the moment everything began to change. It all started that winter morning when Ethan Grant, a 35-year-old billionaire CEO, arrived late for his own board meeting. The world saw him as the genius who turned a dying tech company into a global empire. To his employees, he was confident, untouchable, the man who could predict markets before they even shifted. But beneath the sharp suits and endless meetings, Ethan was exhausted. The empire he built had begun to crumble from the inside, investors pulling out, lawsuits piling up, and an innovation team that had lost faith in his vision. He walked through the glittering lobby of his headquarters, greeting no one, lost in numbers and stock charts flashing across his phone. Then, his eyes caught something unusual: a woman kneeling on the cold marble, scrubbing the floor by hand. Her hair was tied in a rough bun, her uniform faded and worn, but there was a quiet dignity in how she worked, steady, patient, focused. Rough morning, huh? She said without looking up, sensing his presence. He blinked. You could say that. She smiled faintly. Try having your paycheck cut in half and still showing up with a mop. Her words were light, but they landed heavy. Something about her honesty disarmed him. Without thinking, Ethan crouched beside her, watching her polish the tiles to a gleam. You ever think about giving financial advice? He joked, trying to sound amused. Maybe I could use some tips. She didn't laugh. She looked at him for the first time, really looked. You don't need advice, she said softly. You need perspective. Those words lingered in his mind all day. That night, as he sat alone in his penthouse, surrounded by city lights and silence, he couldn't shake the image of that janitor, her calm eyes, her quiet strength. The irony stung. He, the billionaire, had more wealth than he could spend, yet somehow, she seemed richer in spirit. Days passed. He began noticing her more often, in the early mornings before meetings, wiping windows or dusting corners of the hall. Her name tag read Maria. She always hummed softly while she worked, and every time he passed by, she nodded politely, never once treating him like the powerful man everyone else feared. One morning, after a particularly disastrous investor call, he found himself walking downstairs, needing air. She was there again, scrubbing a stair rail. Maria, he said, what would you do if you lost everything overnight? She looked up, thoughtful. Start again, she said simply. Money comes and goes. But character, that's what you build from scratch. He almost laughed at the simplicity, but something cracked open inside him. That day, he invited her to sit in his office, just for a few minutes, he said. She looked uncomfortable, but she sat, her gloved hands folded in her lap. He leaned back in his chair, half amused, half curious. So, Maria, if you were me, if you ran this company, what's the first thing you'd do? Her eyes met his, calm and unwavering. I'd stop pretending you're alone. The words hit harder than any market crash. He opened his mouth to reply, but she continued, voice soft yet unshakable. You built something amazing, sir. But somewhere along the way, you started believing only you could hold it together. No one wants to follow a man who's scared to let others help him. For the first time in years, Ethan felt exposed, not as a CEO, but as a man trying desperately to prove he hadn't lost control. And somehow, this janitor, this woman who cleaned the floors he walked on, saw right through him. After that day, their conversations became a quiet ritual. Every week, before the building filled with people, he'd meet Maria in the lobby, 2 coffees in hand. They'd talk, not about profits or mergers, but about life. She told him about losing her husband, raising her son alone, and working nights to pay off debts. Yet she spoke with peace, not bitterness. You can't control every storm, she told him once, but you can control how you stand in the rain. Her words became his anchor. Slowly, Ethan began changing the way he led, listening more, delegating, treating his employees like partners rather than numbers. The company began to recover. Investors returned, innovation sparked again, and people noticed something new in him, a humility, a warmth that hadn't been there before. One evening, months later, he found Maria cleaning the same lobby where they'd first spoken. The place gleamed, just like before. He stood beside her, holding 2 coffees again. Maria, he said quietly, you once told me I needed perspective. I think you were right. She smiled, that same calm smile. You found it yourself, Mr. Grant. I just reminded you where to look. He hesitated. I'm serious. You've done more for me than anyone in this building. I'd like to offer you a position not as a janitor, as an advisor. Her eyes widened, but she shook her head slowly. Thank you, but I don't need a new title. I already have one that matters, Mother. He laughed softly, touched by her grace. Then at least let me help your son's education. Consider it an investment in the smartest financial advisor I've ever met. She hesitated, then nodded, eyes glistening. All right. But only if you promise me one thing. What's that? Never forget what it felt like to kneel beside someone and listen. That night, Ethan walked out of his office with something money could never buy. Peace. Years later, at a global conference, a journalist asked him the secret behind his company's comeback. He smiled and said, "A janitor once told me something I'll never forget: wisdom doesn't always wear a suit." The crowd laughed, but his eyes drifted to the back of the hall, where an older woman in a simple dress sat quietly, watching him with pride. You think money can buy wisdom? She'd asked that day out. He smiled now, remembering. No, he whispered under his breath. But humility can earn it.